Friends, welcome to another episode of the Bible Book by Book. If you've not subscribed to this channel yet, I want to encourage you to do that. Then as we put out new content, you'll know that it's appearing over the coming weeks. We're going to have content coming out every few weeks, so I'd love you to subscribe and support our channel. If you like the videos, then do give them a like as well. That really helps. It means that other people get to see what we're doing. Now, in this episode, we're going to look at something really cool from the book of Exodus. Sometimes if you understand what is happening kind of culturally, it can unlock a passage that you're reading about. Now, there's a whole section of the book of Exodus that we kind of misunderstand. It's the whole story around Moses and his people and the Ten Commandments. So in these two next videos, this week and next week, we're going to look at two bits of this story and unpack why the writer has used the metaphor of marriage to help us understand the relationship between God and his people. So firstly, in a Jewish wedding, this is what would happen. A nice Jewish boy would see a nice Jewish girl from a distance, and he would approach her and he'd take her to her home, and he'd say in front of her family, drinking a goblet of wine. Wine was always a symbol of God's presence on earth. He would say a few things. He would say, I've seen where you are, and I want to take you out of the situation that you're in. I want to rescue you from where you are. I want to redeem you, and I want you to take you to a new home. I'm going to build a new home for you. And they would make this commitment to marriage. And then what would happen is the young man would go back to his family home, and on the side of his family home would build a property that his bride would come and move in and live with him in. It'd take about a year to build, something like that. So he would go off and do that. While he was doing that, she would prepare herself to be married. She would get herself ritually clean. She would be prepared for the moment that he was going to turn up again to marry her. So he goes off, builds the house. She goes off. So he prepares a room in his father's house for his bride. Get that? She goes off and prepares herself, gets the dress ready, get the clothes ready, and gets herself cleansed and clean. Now, when that's all happened and he's ready, he would come to the edge of the village, and somebody would take out a ram's horn, and they would blow this ram's horn. That would announce that the bridegroom was coming to marry the bride, at which point she would then go, he's on his way, and the marriage would happen. So she would hear the ram's horn, she would get herself ready, and they would meet together. Now, what we're told is they would then have this cloth that would hang over the both of them. It was called the huppah, and this cloth was to represent God's presence. And underneath the huppah, they would make vows with one another. They would come together in God's presence and make these vows together. So I just want to kind of remind you a little bit of the Exodus story. So Exodus chapter 3, verse 7 says this. The Lord said, I have indeed seen the misery of my people in Egypt. I've seen you, and I've heard you crying out because of the slave drivers, and I am concerned about your suffering. So I've come down to rescue you. I've seen you, and I've come to rescue you, it says, from the land of the Egyptians, and to bring you up into a land that is good and spacious, a land flowing with milk and honey. In other words, I've seen you, I want to rescue you, I want to redeem you, and I want to take you to a new home, a home that's flowing with milk and honey. That is the promise that God makes to Moses. Moses then goes off and sets the people free from Egypt. We then have this incredible second part of the story. They're set free, and God is wanting to make a commitment to his people. And you see in Exodus 19, the story unfolds. It says in chapter 19, verse 5, Now, if you obey me fully and keep my covenant, then out of all of the nations you will be my treasured possession. And the word treasured possession is in the Hebrew, the word segula. If you were marrying your bride, she would be your segula, your treasured possession. So this phrase that is used in the start of this little story, everybody reading this would go, hang on, but that's bride language, that's wedding language. And it goes on to say in verse 7, So Moses went back and summoned the elders of the people and sat down before them and set out the words the Lord had commanded him. And the people all responded together, we will do everything the Lord has asked. God says, will you be my segula, my treasured possession? And their response is, I will, or we do. In other words, you can see this kind of the wedding language that starts to appear in all of this. So that's what happens. And we're told in verse 9, the Lord God said to Moses, I am going to come to you in a dense cloud. And the word dense cloud is the word Shekinah. And it's this idea of this God's presence hovering over. Remember the hoopah and the prayer shawl, the cloth that would hang over them where they made their vows? Well, that's the same language here. This Shekinah, this dense cloud will come and hover over you. Verse 10, and the Lord God said to Moses, go to the people and consecrate them today and tomorrow. Make them wash their clothes and they will be ready on the third day. Notice the word of the phrase third day there. But go off and tell them to get themselves ritually clean. Tell them to go and get on their best clothes. Go get purified for this event that is about to happen. So that's what they do. Verse 14, after Moses had gone down the mountain to the people, he consecrated them and they washed their clothes. They prepared themselves for the third day and they abstained from sexual relations. What a bizarre thing to tell us. They've abstained from sexual relations. That's what's meant to happen in marriage, isn't it? So again, more marriage language. Verse 16, on the morning of the third day, there was thunder and lightning and a thick cloud hovered over the mountain. The Shekinah hovered over the mountain. Then a loud trumpet blast came. In other words, he's coming. The bridegroom is on his way. We're told that the dense cloud hovered over the mountain like smoke. And it was underneath this that God was going to make some promises and commitments to his people, which we'll look at in the second episode. But get this whole language that we have here is meant to be telling us that what is about to happen underneath the hoopah, underneath that prayer shawl, underneath the Shekinah of God, the presence of God, what was about to happen was going to be a wedding. So often when we think about God, we think about God being this being that's so distant that doesn't want much of a relationship with us, that doesn't love us in any shape or form. But actually what we start to see here is God actually is a lover who's looking for us to love him back. God is looking for relationship. Second episode, we're going to look at the next little bit of this, which is very cool. I just want to kind of leave you this question. How do you see God? Do you see him as somebody that wants to have a committed relationship with you? Or do you see him as somebody that you've got to try and convince that you're all right to? Is God on your side or is God not? Because in this passage we start to see what is unraveling is there's a wedding about to happen. God is wanting to marry his people, be committed to them and have them committed to him. Are you looking for that kind of relationship with God? Because that's kind of what we see here. I hope you find that helpful. Grace and peace.